Welcome to the Cody Felger Podcast, a podcast dedicated to talking Colts football. Here is your host, Cody Felger.
Welcome back to the Cody Felger Podcast. With me, Julian Rosen. Julian, it's been a while, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, man. Just got summer here, hopefully some summertime weather here in Michigan. So just enjoying the cool breeze and excited that the Colts are back in action at OTAs.
Absolutely. The Colts started OTAs on Tuesday. A couple takeaways from it now. The first off is kind of not really big news, but when it involves your franchise quarterback, it's big news. Andrew Luck was a non-participant on Tuesday and Wednesday with a calf, and Frank Reich is adamant that it's precautionary. But nonetheless, it would be nice for Andrew Luck to be on there, be on the field. But, it's not really a big deal, I think, for Luck and company. But the Colts now have 4 QBs on their roster, actually. A couple days ago, they signed quarterback Chad Kelly. I think he's actually the nephew of Jim Kelly, former Bills great quarterback. I'm curious, before we get into OTAs, what can Chad Kelly bring to this Colts quarterback room? What's intriguing about him to you, Julian?
This was a guy who was kind of highly touted out of high school, All-American, of course, as most of these guys are. But he, I think he could bring a little bit of a new energy to the quarterback room. And I think the thing that most Colts fans are talking about, and what I wanted to get from you and your read on it, Cody, is this could be a little bit of a signal that Chris Ballard's open to trading Jacoby Brissett at some point down the line.
Yeah, potentially, I think, but I also think it's a kind of, this is kind of how I view it, I guess. So you got Jacoby Brissett right now, who's going to be your backup quarterback for this year at least. But his contract's up after this year. And so I think what the Colts are doing, and I think it's very smart, is they're bringing guys in who have loads and loads of potential. Like Chad Kelly, I know people have commented and I've seen different things on his arm strength. And so the Colts must really like that. And, since Jacoby Brissett, his contract, like I mentioned, is up after this year, Ballard has expressed his love for Jacoby Brissett, his love for having him on the team, but also with that love, he also realizes that Brissett's a competitor. He's a guy who wants to get a starting job somewhere or compete for a starting job somewhere. And simply with the Colts, it's not going to happen unless Andrew Luck, knock on wood, Andrew Luck stays healthy. It's not going to happen in reality probably for Jacoby Brissett. And so I look at it as giving guys like Chad Kelly, guys with loads of potential, time to develop, and time. It's like they don't immediately have to be thrust into that backup role per se this year. They can take time to develop on the practice squad. So if and when Ballard lets Jacoby Brissett walk next year, and the Colts should get a compensatory 3rd or 4th round pick for it next year. But anyways, when he does let him walk, the Colts will have a guy that they feel comfortable with jumping in to be the backup quarterback for Andrew Luck. So that's kind of my take on it. It's kind of my take on the Chad Kelly signing. It's a guy who's had plenty of character concerns. It's certainly something that's an issue, but definitely I think that he has a lot of potential, and the Colts see that in him. And for next year, for sure, he definitely has a chance. If he stays clean, if he cleans up his act a little bit, to be Andrew Luck's backup maybe for now and for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and it's definitely something they want to develop now, especially if Brissett leaves for other opportunities. There are a few teams, I'm sure, that would love to have Brissett as somebody competing for the starting job down the line. Or, he's probably one of the best backups in the NFL. Especially with, a few QBs that are a little bit more on the injury-prone side these days, and, getting banged up and guys getting older and not. So, I could see even a team like the Saints maybe bring him in as their the prodigy Drew Brees or, anything like that. There's just a lot of availability. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Brissett in the market next offseason. So I definitely agree with that. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. Cody, the next thing I want to talk about, kind of the hot buzz of the week for the Colts, is Gerald McCoy, the defensive tackle of the Buccaneers. It seems like the Colts are interested. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I definitely think age is definitely potentially a concern. I don't think that McCoy is the disruptor he was, 4, 5, 6 years ago. But I think as far as the character goes, I think he's a perfect fit. Kind of looking at all the different takes on it, all the people will agree that Gerald McCoy is a class act. He's a great guy in the locker room. And you look at that Colts defensive interior, and there's some players there. You got a Margus Hunt, you got a Danico Autry, you got a Tyquan Lewis who should be healthy this year. But other than that, they don't. I guess you got Grover Stewart as well, but who hasn't really shown a ton. So you don't have a lot of proven guys who have done it like a guy with the pedigree of Gerald McCoy. So I think that the Colts are in on it right now. They're one of the teams that are rumored to be interested in him, but I think it would be good for depth standpoint. I think if you had to make me pick and choose a position on the team, and specifically on the defense that is maybe lacking a little bit in depth, it would be that interior defensive line. So I think signing a guy like McCoy, who I believe he's 31, so signing to a couple years contract, I think he's a guy that can definitely bring a lot to the Colts. And maybe if production falls off a little bit, he can also help mentor those young guys like the Tyquan Lewises, even the guys like Kimoko Toure, those type of guys who are pass rushers, and kind of help them with their craft. And so I think it could be a good signing for the Colts, but I'm kind of either way on it because I understand, kind of the regression with age and stuff. So, but if you had to make me choose, I would say the Colts should sign him if given the opportunity, if given the chance.
Yeah, I lean that way as well, Cody. I agree pretty much with everything you said. I think it would be a similar contract to Justin Houston's, 2 years, kind of like a moderate, nothing crazy, nothing incredibly high per year, but a pretty solid contract for a veteran defender, just like Houston, who has proven it and is a high character guy. I think it would give Eberflus another chess piece, just another body that he can rotate in with Toure, with Margus Hunt, with Danico Autry along that defensive line. And I think really the biggest priority, and the reason the Colts are interested, is because adding depth in the front seven has been a huge priority. You saw it with Banigou and Bobby Okereke, and adding Justin Houston and re-signing Margus Hunt. So I think McCoy would just add more solidarity, depth, and a little bit more tenacity to that front seven, which is already blossoming into, I think, one of the stronger front sevens, at least young up and coming groups in the AFC. With Leonard and with the two rookies that we drafted, and Anthony Walker and Hunt and Jabal Sheard, it's a really solid group coming in for 2019.
It really is. And kind of looking at, going back to the OTAs a little bit, kind of looking at the players who missed a little bit of time, who we kind of expected to miss a little bit of time. You got Deion Kane, Ross Travis, Darius Leonard, Jack Doyle on Monday, and then Tuesday you got Penny Hart, Clayton Gathers, Chris Milton, Eric Ebron, and Jabal Sheard. And so the Colts have quite a few guys who are on the mend from injuries last year, whether major or minor. They're wanting to take the most precautions that they can. But another thing that's interesting is some of the guys who are active in OTAs. You got T.Y. Hilton, who, as we know, last year suffered the high and low ankle sprain in Week 14 against the Texans. But he played through it, put up some incredible numbers considering the injury he was facing. But I think he had to take a couple weeks off there. And he looks like he's a full go. And also a guy who is a very intriguing player, another wide receiver. Marcus Johnson was also active. Johnson, and you may remember last year, I think he was traded to the Eagles for Darrell Daniels, tight end that the Colts had last year. And I think he kind of showed some flashes before he went out in that New York Jets game. I think that was the game he got injured. Where he tore a ligament in his right ankle. He had 2 catches for 52 yards and a touchdown. I think that was kind of his coming out game a little bit, and I think he could have done more damage. But he's another guy, and I think he's kind of right there in the mix, Julian, for that number 4, number 5, and potentially number 6 wide receiver group there. There's a couple guys. There's going to be a big competition for it. And more guys who are also a little bit injured, which I think is interesting. I want to get your take on these guys really fast here. You got Malik Hooker, who's fully participating in OTAs, and you also got Matthias Farley, who, if you remember Farley from last year, I think he got injured. I think he got injured in that Patriots game. I can't remember which game he got injured, but he was injured pretty early on into the year. But a year previous to that, I thought he showed some things for you and is a good reserve safety there for the Colts. And then Malik Hooker, something that I found really, really interesting, Julian, about Malik Hooker was for the first time since he's been drafted by the Colts, this is the first time he's participated in OTAs, first time he's really participated in the spring. And it's very, very interesting because, you got coming out of college, I think he had that torn labrum, and he also had a hernia surgery coming in when the Colts drafted him, so he wasn't available until later on. And then last year, that this time he was still recovering from that ACL tear. And so for the first time this year, Malik Hooker is actually able to participate in this stuff, which I wanted to get your take. How valuable do you think these reps are this early on for a guy like Malik Hooker?
I think it's just a really good sign, really good omen, especially for your center fielder in such a pass-happy conference, in AFC when we really break it down. Having him out there and working with some of these younger guys, the Kari Willises and, Rocky Sin, both guys who were drafted this year, and getting some reps in, as well with Pierre Desir and Quincy Wilson and whatnot. It's going to be valuable, I think, for him. He's definitely had some injury concerns, as had Geathers. I think at the end of the day, adding depth in all positions, I just mentioned the front seven, but really all along the 53-man roster, you can tell depth is something that Ballard values very highly. Character, speed, athleticism, depth, these are like the key buzzwords for a Chris Ballard team. We're really starting to discover that, Cody, now that we've had 3 drafts with this guy. And that's why you bring in, Kari Willis and Rocky Sin and Marvell Tell as well to add to this secondary. But that being said, it is good to have some insurance because, Malik Hooker and Clayton Geathers both have been plagued by injuries. The odds that they both play 16 games, I would say, is very low, just to be honest, just to be realistic. So, but I think it's good that Hooker's out there early. He's really a key piece to that defense. He's kind of the unsung hero, I feel like, of the defense because, he doesn't get sacks and he doesn't get a lot of tackles, but he really limits what most teams that we play can do down the field. So it is good to see him out there. And a couple other guys, a lot of good reports about Mo Alley Cox and Devin Funchess and what they're doing. Because of the tight end injuries, Mo Alley Cox has been running with the first team with Brissett, Hilton, and Funchess and Nelson and all those guys. And the reports are that Mo Alley Cox and Devin Funchess are both really impressing in the 7-on-7 and the 11-on-11 drills. So.
Yeah, I actually wanted to touch on that. It's funny. That's kind of where I wanted to go to next, looking at good days for Funchess, good day for Paris Campbell, the Colts' second-round pick. We'll start there, and then we'll look at Mo Alley Cox. So as you know, Funchess, formerly out of Michigan, played for Carolina for a couple of years there. He's 6'4", 225. And I wanted to read something really fast. I kind of looked at some OTA notes from the Colts website, from Andrew Walker of the Colts website, talking about Funchess. He said he was catching everything thrown his direction, including an impressive 50-50 back shoulder throw from Brissett, where he was draped by cornerback Pierre Desir. And then talking about Paris Campbell, he said he certainly didn't look like a rookie in his first official team practice, as he showed off his speed, running routes all over the field, including a nice play out of the slot on a deep slant to the right sideline, hauling a pass in front of safety George Odom. So you see these guys, these two guys, they have loads and loads of potential, and already the Colts are seeing that potential and what they can be. And so I'm kind of curious, what are your takeaways from these two guys? It's definitely good to see a guy like Funchess, for example, having a good couple days of OTAs.
Absolutely, yeah. The Colts have, the Colts are going to be coming in with such a revamped wide receiver core if Deion Kane is healthy. He was really blowing people away at camp. If you remember this time last year, Cody, all the talk was about Deion Kane, and now kind of that has translated to Devin Funchess, and they're both big receivers. They're physical, point of attack. I wish there was a video of that catch because, a lot of guys from the Colts and beat writers and whatnot are talking about that play over Pierre Desir. It just seems like Chris Ballard had a vision. He wanted to add, a big guy, a big-bodied red zone threat, kind of 50-50 ball receiver in Funchess, and then that speed out of the slot and a guy that can be a gadget player in Paris Campbell. I really think the offense is going to be so dynamic. I think Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni and Andrew Luck are just going to have a lot of fun running wheel routes and, with Naheem Hines and running little button hooks and short bubble screens with Paris Campbell, opening stuff up for T.Y. and Ebron and, getting Funchess involved as well. That's why you mentioned Marcus Johnson earlier. Him and Chester Rogers and Doris Fountain and guys like this are going to be fighting for those peripheral wide receiver spots. But if everybody's healthy and all systems go, Funchess, Paris Campbell, T.Y. Hilton, and Deion Kane looks like the core wide receiver group for the Colts this year. And that seems like a lot better than what we were going in with last year.
Right. And talking about Campbell, I think as you mentioned, that the Colts will probably use him as a gadget guy, but Campbell's more than that, I think. I think when you think of Campbell initially, when you hear gadget guy, you kind of think of a smaller guy, T.Y. Hilton type guy, Tyreek Hill type guy. But Paris Campbell, he's not a small guy. I mean, he's 6 foot 205, and so he definitely is. He's not a big receiver, but he's not a small receiver by any means. And so one thing that I think is interesting about Campbell, and you were mentioning about those other receivers, for example, Chester Rogers last year, he kind of made his living on the Colts roster as a punt returner, and we also saw that Paris Campbell was returning punts. So my question to you, Julian, is, what could this mean potentially for Chester Rogers if you see a guy like Paris Campbell start returning punts and kicks?
I don't think Chester Rogers makes this roster, Cody, to be honest. I think Marcus Johnson gets that last slot at wide receiver. And I think they're going to go in with 5 receivers into the season because they're going to have 3 tight ends, and I think they're going to use Cox, Doyle, and Ebron interchangeably. I think Doyle's probably going to be, as long as he's healthy, he's going to lead up the tight ends and snaps, probably about 60%. And you'll see Ebron and Mo Alley Cox about 30 to 50. Ebron, of course, is going to get a ton of red zone usage. But, yeah, I just think Paris Campbell is an upgrade over Chester Rogers as far as the skill set. And I agree, he can definitely be used in gadget plays. I think more so. That's what I meant. But he, like you said, he's not small by any means. He's sort of middle of the road as far as his height. His quickness is just unbelievable. As a Michigan fan, I remember him just running yard on us and just absolutely terrorizing what was an elite Michigan defense. Devin Bush, Rashawn Gary, all those guys that were drafted highly in 2019, and he just humiliated them, weaved his way through them. So, basically the way Frank Reich was talking in that Colts draft video that we were just talking about, it's just he's a threat to score anytime he gets the ball. He's a threat to score when he touches the ball. So you just want to get him involved however you can, whether it's a little dump off or whether it's a wheel route or a deep slant, however you can. So I'm excited to see what he adds to the offense, and I'm sure Andrew Luck is the happiest of us all.
Yeah, definitely. One thing that I think is very interesting about Paris Campbell is, like I mentioned, he's not a small guy. He's got the speed to be a burner, but he wasn't really used that way at Ohio State. The thing that's interesting is, the Colts are starting to use that a little bit, and we saw that with what Andrew Walker was talking about in the OTAs is the Colts are starting to use these things and make Paris Campbell run these routes that he didn't run at Ohio State. And it's interesting because he has the ability to do so. And I think he's one thing that's interesting about Paris Campbell is he has the ability to do basically anything. You saw at Ohio State, for example, where it would be a lot of screen passes that just get the ball into his hands and he would go and he would make plays. But he also has that deep threat ability that I think the Colts are wanting to tap into because he's got that elite speed. He was the fastest receiver in the draft, so he's got something there. And I think one thing that should really attract the Colts, and the Colts should really look into, is that deep threat ability of Paris Campbell, because he's a big, he's not a small receiver, so he can go up and get some balls for you, but he also can do a lot of other things in the backfield and, just getting the ball into his hands type of things. And so Paris Campbell is definitely a very, very intriguing thing, and I can now see why the Colts are so high on him, because he can really do everything, Julian.
Absolutely. His versatility is going to be such an asset to this offense. And, this the amount of creativity, I think it's going to open things up for Sirianni and Reich's playbook ultimately. As far as especially what they can do in a 4-minute offense, a 2-minute offense, no huddle. Obviously we're biased because this is our team and we follow them, night in and day out. But that being said, I think this offense is just going to be absolutely a nightmare for most defenses that we face this year. If they don't have the personnel to really keep T.Y. Hilton and Paris Campbell in front of them at all times. Covering both those guys on the same play, just imagine it's really going to be difficult, especially with how creative Frank Reich and Nick Sirianni have proven to be as play callers.
Right, and another guy that could potentially be in the mix to help the Colts offense out in 2019 is Mo Alley Cox. He right now in OTAs with the Colts, 3 of their 4 tight ends right now, who we think are going to make the roster, are out right now with injuries. You got Jack Doyle, who suffered that hip injury in the Miami game. Eric Ebron had a minor surgery, so he's out right now. And then Ross Travis obviously got injured last year, and he is out. So Mo Alley Cox right now is a number 1 tight end. If you're not familiar, he's a former basketball player at VCU, and the Colts really liked him for his size and athleticism. And so Reich was really raving on Mo Alley Cox after the first couple days of camp here, and he was talking about specifically his route running improvement. He said that he admitted last year that Mo Alley Cox was really kind of average in his route running ability, and he's really raved about how he's grown in that. And so he also said something. He also had a quote that I thought was really, really cool, Julian. He said, "He's so long." Mo Alley Cox said, "He's so long, and they don't want to tackle him." And he also mentioned that the game is kind of slowing down now for Cox because, he mentioned the tight end position is one of the hardest positions to play in football. And so he's saying now Mo Alley Cox at age 25, he's starting to get it. The game's really slowing down for him. And so I'm curious, what do you think Mo Alley Cox can bring to this Colts tight end group? That's got Eric Ebron, who scored multiple touchdowns last year, double-digit touchdowns last year. Got Jack Doyle, who's kind of the jack of all trades, and no pun intended. And also, he was a Pro Bowl tight end a couple years ago. So what can Mo Alley Cox really bring to this tight end group that they don't have right now?
Yeah, I actually think the Colts have probably the strongest tight end group in the NFL, certainly the AFC. And just as you mentioned, Jack Doyle is a guy that Luck is very comfortable with. He's been playing with now. This will be probably his 5th season together with Luck, maybe the 4th because he missed 2017, of course. But, Ebron proved himself to be the weapon that, Detroit thought he was coming out of the draft 5 years ago. And Mo Alley Cox is developing. If he can improve his route running, I think that's going to get him on the field more. I think he could play 25 to 35% of snaps. And it's just another chess piece for this offense. I mean, you think of all the guys that the Colts can throw at you. We haven't really mentioned Nyheim Hines or Deion Kane too much. Mo Alley Cox is another guy, and I think he's going to have a few really nice plays in the red zone and on key third down conversions. That it's just a big body, and if he gets covered by a nickel corner, God save that guy's soul, because if you're having a 5'10", maybe 5'11" slot corner trying to keep up vertically with Mo Alley Cox in the end zone, I'm going to say it's pretty much over at that point. So I'm excited to see what this tight end group can do if they can stay healthy, because Doyle's a great blocker, and Ebron was just such a great tool for Luck in the red zone. I think Mo Alley Cox can be a nice kind of secondary, tertiary piece to this offense, just like Nyheim Hines and Deion Kane can be. So I'm excited to see what he can bring. One more point before I get out of here on you, Cody. So we've talked about a lot of the different position groups. We mentioned safety. We talked about the front seven, and we've talked about the offense. Definitely got to see how things go in OTAs. But I wanted to know the one position battle that you're most curious to see, or maybe the one player that you're most curious about heading into the rest of the offseason programs.
Okay, so I'll tell you what, I'm going to do one for offense and one for defense, just because there's two position groups that I love and very, very intriguing to me. So I'll start with offense, and I'll start with wide receiver. I think, we assume that Deion Kane's going to be that number 4, but we don't really know. Then you got that number 5 receiver, who I think is going to be very, very interesting. You got tons of guys who could potentially take that. You got Chester Rogers, who the Colts really like. You got Marcus Johnson that we mentioned. You got a guy like Reese Fountain. Does he make the jump? You got a lot of guys in there who were very, very intriguing. And so on offense for that wide receiver position, I'm not going to cop out and say Deion Kane, although he's one that I'm really, really intrigued by. But I think the one that I'm most intrigued by is the guy we already mentioned, in Marcus Johnson, just because, he's a guy who I think has a lot of potential, and the Colts really like Marcus Johnson a lot. And I think he was starting to kind of understand the offense, because let's be real, like Andrew Luck, last year, as good as he was, he still didn't grasp fully the Colts offense, and now I think has admitted he's very, very comfortable. And so, you throw a guy like Johnson, who is now going to be in his second year in Reich's system, and formerly of the Eagles, so he knows Reich's system a little bit. I think that'll definitely help him. So he's a very, very intriguing guy to me, just because I think he has a lot of potential, and I think he could honestly find himself sneaking onto this Colts roster if he can stay healthy as that number 5 receiver. And as far as defense goes, definitely the corner group is very, very intriguing to me. And it's going to be another thing where I look at kind of the back end of the roster, because there's so much depth with that cornerback group. You have last year you have Kenny Moore, Pierre Desir, you have Quincy Wilson, then you add Rock Ya-Sin, you add Marvell Tell. And I mean, that's 5 guys right there. And then you think, are the Colts going to keep 5 guys? Are they going to keep 6 corners? You know, they also have a lot of safeties who I think they like. And so the cornerback group especially is intriguing to me, Julian. And a guy that I'm very intrigued on, who we didn't see last year, is Jalen Collins. I think the guy, he's a former second-round pick. You know, he actually was a starter on that defense for the Falcons when they went to the Super Bowl a couple years ago. So I think he has a lot of potential to be a very, very good player for the Colts if he can stay clean and just, you know, really live up to his potential. And so he's the guy that I'm really, really intrigued is Jalen Collins. You know, very, very talented guy, but can he live up to that potential and sneak onto this Colts roster? I guess that's to be seen.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great name to bring up. Jalen Collins is kind of a forgotten man in limbo right now because, you know, Colts fans aren't too familiar with him. But, yeah, he was in that 2016 Falcons defense with Keanu Neal and Vic Beasley that were injured last year. So, I definitely think he can, add some competition, and that's another word that Ballard uses a lot. You know, competition. Guys that can compete and push maybe quote starters or guys that are in that position for roles. You know, and really bring the whole and bring the energy of the locker room and that position group up, however possible. So I'm excited to see what Jalen Collins can do. I do like the cornerback group. I really like how it's come along. Chris Ballard has just, I mean. Cody, I don't know if you ever just like sit back and just look in amazement at how Chris Ballard has overhauled this roster. I mean, this is a Ballard roster in just 3 years, you know. It's all guys that he's drafted and that he likes, you know. I love bringing in Rocky Sin. Love this guy. I think he's going to be, maybe not in 2019, but I think down the road he's going to be our ace corner for the future with Pierre and with Quincy and guys like that. So that's definitely great. I like the wide receiver group as well. The one I'm looking at is Anthony Walker and Bobby Okereke. I think, speaking of competition, I think these guys are going to push each other. They both have a lot of great assets. Bobby Okereke has that great length that Ballard and other scouts and Frank Reich glowed about when they talked about him, and they thought it was a gift that he landed to them in the 3rd round. Some people had him going late 2nd, the linebacker out of Stanford. So I'm really interested to see what he can do. He was actually probably my favorite draft pick. I think him and Paris Campbell, as far as the value of where we got them. Some people had Campbell going early 2nd. Some people had Okereke going late 2nd. So I'm curious to see what Bobby and Anthony Walker in that linebackers group next to, Darius Leonard, and they might move Ben Banigou around and guys like that. But I'm curious to see the competition and the battle in camp between those two.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add about, you mentioned Ben Banigou. He actually was playing a little bit of the edge at the defensive end position, and so that I think is very, very intriguing to see a guy like him, who at TCU, that's primarily what he did was rush the passer and play end, and so it'll be interesting to see how the Colts use him. He's a very, very versatile player. I think if you say like a guy like Nyheim Hines or Paris Campbell is kind of your gadget guy on offense, I think a guy like Ben Banigou is definitely a gadget guy on defense. He can line up different positions, do different things for you, and he's very, very productive. And so very, very big, very, very long, like the Colts like. And so it'll be intriguing to see how the Colts use him in 2019. Well, Julian, I think that's all the time we have today, man. Thank you so much for just being on here and talking about Colts OTAs. It'll be definitely interesting to see whenever the Colts, come together for training camp, how some of these position battles play out. Hey all, Cody here. I just wanted to say first off, thank you so much for supporting my podcast. It really means a lot to have all your backing. If you haven't yet, be sure to hit that subscribe button and also put the bell on so you know when I post. You can always find my episodes here on YouTube, but if you're like me and you like listening to podcasts on the podcast app, you can find me there as well. Second, if you really like my podcast and you'd like to support me in some way, you can find me on Patreon. As much as I enjoy doing this, it also takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and also a little bit of my own personal funds. So if you'd ever want to support me on Patreon, you can find me there at patreon.com/Cody Felger Podcast. Again, that's patreon.com/Cody Felger Podcast. Thanks everyone, and go Colts.